Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little bit later in the show. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, will join us. We begin by talking Browns as well. And not great news from Harris County, Texas. Second-year defensive tackle Perrion Winfrey facing a misdemeanor assault charge in Harris County, allegedly injuring a woman that he was dating. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Mary Kay, not the kind of thing we want to talk about, but we do need to mention it. And guys are due in town next week, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, guys are coming in on Monday for the offseason program. This is certainly not anything the Browns wanted to have to deal with right now whatsoever. They are gathering more information right now before they make any rash judgments about anything. They need to probably talk to him. They might want to talk to the authorities, of course, and figure out what this is all about. Probably get maybe a lawyer involved and kind of see what's going on here. But I will say that it doesn't bode well for Perrion to be starting the 2023 season this way when, he's got a lot to prove. He's got a lot to show these guys that he's serious about his craft and that he is going to be a professional. So not sure how this is going to play out quite yet.
Yeah, and again, don't know much more than what we've seen. It is misdemeanor charges that have been brought against him. All right. Another thing that kind of created a stir yesterday was the whole Greg Newsome switching agents. I know you've written and dealt with this. What do you think the future holds for Greg Newsome?
Well, you know what? I think that Greg is going to come in here. I think that he's going to buy into the program. I think he's going to embrace Jim Schwartz's new defense. I really don't think it's going to be a problem. I think he did feel the way that he did. He might still feel that way in some ways, that he feels like he's better suited to playing outside, but nobody said he was going to be playing primarily in the nickel this year. Anyways, we don't really know exactly what Jim Schwartz has in mind for him. So it'll be interesting to talk to Greg when we can. Hopefully he'll be available to us next week. But from everything I can tell, he's ready to come in, just buckle down and get down to work.
And you know what? From a player's perspective, outside corners where you get paid almost twice what a slot corner does. So you certainly understand the thought process from Greg Newsome's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where, I wrote in my column that I wrote last night and posted again today that, that's where the money and the Pro Bowls are made as an outside corner. That's, when you're a first-round cornerback, that's what you expect to do. You expect to be outside covering the opponent's best receiver or second best receiver, however it shakes out. And, that's what Greg Newsome wants to do. That's what he expects to do. And I think he will be doing plenty of that this year. Obviously, he moved inside in sub defenses last year, but there are many ways to go about this. They have a lot of versatility in the back end, and there's a lot of things that can happen. And I'm sure once he sits down with Jim Schwartz and he sees what this is all about, I'm sure he'll be fine with it.
Yeah, and the other thing is Jim Schwartz wants that. He wants a guy that wants to be challenged without question. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. I just watched the show. That's Newsome wanting to trade. We should call up Detroit, offer Newsome for the 18th pick. No way we should take anything less than a first rounder. That guy's going to be a good shutdown corner. I don't know. Let me know what you think, brother. But I hope you had a good Easter. I love you, man. And be careful and be safe.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I think, we think it got overblown that he wants to be traded. I agree with him. I think he's a shutdown corner. I wouldn't trade him because the guy you pick at 18 you hope is going to be as good as Greg Newsome.
Well, this was Andrew Berry's second first-round pick in this regime, in this tenure here with the Cleveland Browns. And you're not going to give up on that easily or lightly by any stretch of the imagination. And they have no plans to do that. They have three really good cornerbacks under contract for at least the next 3 seasons, if you factor in the 5th-year option for Greg Newsome. And, that's really a great problem to have. They're happy that they have this issue. Many teams in the NFL would be envious of this problem, and they're going to find a way to make it work for everyone.
Yeah, and again, those are the problems you like having. Too many of a good player at one position. This is also kind of interesting. So the NFLPA, the Players Association, issued report cards on how players rated their teams, the level of confidence that their current ownership is willing to invest to make upgrades. This is coming from a senior NFL writer for The Athletic, Kalen Kaler. Falcons, Bills, Browns, Broncos, Vikings, and Ravens all listed as 100% confident in their owners. And again, I think the most important thing that might get overlooked with that is players that have confidence in ownership, that franchise becomes an attractive destination for free agents. That's kind of the secondary part to this.
Yeah, players do, put a lot into the hopper when they make their decisions of where to come. And the fact that the Haslam's are always willing to spend money to upgrade the team, to upgrade the roster, to upgrade their facilities, I think that's very, very important. You can say a lot of things about the Haslam's in terms of them maybe not knowing what they didn't know in the early going of their ownership. But what they have always done is they've always spent the money, and they've always done everything they possibly can to try to get it right. Even if sometimes the decisions don't work out the way that they want, they will open up the wallet and spend the money. And I think players do appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, the goal has always been to win. Haven't really figured out the path there, but and I know you've dealt with this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. What positions of need do you think we're not talking enough about for the Browns?
You know what? I think there are a couple of positions. I do think that, that other defensive tackle, and especially, again, now with the uncertainty surrounding Perrion Winfrey, a player they felt would step up in his second season and make a bigger contribution. That second tackle next to Dalvin Tomlinson is an area where I think they could still use just a quality starter, just nail it down and don't mess around there anymore. The guys that played there last year did not grade out well. I'm talking about, Jordan Elliott and Perrion and Tommy Togiai. They all ended up, according to PFF, Pro Football Focus, somewhere in like the 120s. You want your guys to be up in the top 20 or top 30 for maybe your second defensive tackle. So I still think that's an area of need. And then number 3, edge rusher. Now, you can try to count on Alex Wright to get the job done for you there, and I'm sure he's another player that will step up in his second season, but that's also an area where they could use a proven pass rusher that you can kind of know that you're going to get those 6 sacks and 17 pressures out of.
When you look at all that Andrew Berry has done, to me it says they're doing everything to win now. Is that fair, do you think?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. Just, the sense of urgency of bringing Deshaun Watson on board tells you exactly where their minds are at. This is not a long-term proposition. They want to win now. And they've gone out and they've added a lot of talent. I think it was 12 free agents that they've signed so far, made the trade for Elijah Moore, really overhauled the defense in a lot of ways. And they're out there, they're spending the money, they're redoing contracts. Obviously, they had to restructure Deshaun to make some of these things happen. They made some smart moves at wide receiver with, the trade for Elijah Moore means that you didn't have to pay an Odell Beckham Jr. per se. So, this is a win now team.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some other things the Browns might be looking at doing. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the smell of truth and reason.
This is Aaron, lifelong Cleveland Browns fan living in Los Angeles, California. Regarding Devin White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he is requesting to be traded from the Buccaneers. And if you guys remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, his rookie season, when the Bucs went to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, he was an absolute monster against them in his rookie season. He destroyed Patrick Mahomes and their entire offense. So, I think that Devin White would be the perfect kind of linebacker for our defense, and especially in Jim Schwartz's new defense. It would be a perfect fit because, first of all, he's young. He has good size. He's 5'11". I think he's about 235, 240. That's a pretty small, nimble and quick linebacker, but he still has enough size to really get around and move around. And that's the perfect kind of linebacker that our defense needs. So I'm just curious what you guys think, if we should go after Devin White, if you guys think it would be a good fit for our defense. Yeah. And as always, go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, what do you think? Devin White, I know he makes like $11.5 million, I think is what he's due this year. Your thoughts on Devin White?
Well, he is the kind of impact player that probably would be able to come in here and really help out this defense right away. The thing is, the Browns really don't want to, I don't think, give up the resources that it would take to get him. And then, of course, then you do have to pay him. Now, that's not the biggest issue because you can restructure that contract, give some of it as an upfront signing bonus and get that cap number way down. But I'm just not sure that they have the draft capital to get it done. Again, we're in the second year of 3 straight years without a first-round pick. This year, they also don't have a second-round pick. They use that to move down to 74 and pick up Elijah Moore. So not really sure, how much more draft capital they would want to commit to something like this, but it's definitely something to at least look into, to kick the tires on, and to see if it could be a fit.
Fair enough. All right. Along those lines, a name that we kept hearing associated with the Browns before the Elijah Moore trade was DeAndre Hopkins. Now, and again, I know you've addressed this in a Hey Mary Kay. Do you think the Browns would pursue DeAndre Hopkins if he was released or cut by the Cardinals?
I have put him in the very unlikely, but never say never, because you never really know how these things are going to shake out. So much of it has to do with the market for the player, the price of the player, and all those kinds of things. So right now, I'm still going to say very, very unlikely. But if he ends up without much of a market and is willing to do some kind of a 1-year deal where he's reunited with Deshaun Watson, then, who knows? Maybe his agent and the Browns can try to talk about something. But right at this moment, I just don't see it.
Let's talk a little bit about 74. So the Browns will pick first at number 74. It's in the 3rd round after trading back some spots to get Elijah Moore. Do you think they're more likely to draft a wide receiver or defensive tackle at 74?
You know what? I just don't think that they have their board set up that way. I think, where they're looking at it quite like that. I think when their number is called at 74, they will look at that board. They will see who is the best available player on their board at that moment, and they will go with that player. Now, if they have 2 positions that are tied and they've got 2 guys that are rated almost exactly the same, that's when you go for more so, which one do you need more than the other one? If to use an example, I guess it may be, I don't know. I don't want to say receiver because, I think they still would draft a wide receiver at number 74 over anything else if that is the best available player there. So that's what they'll do. And they will stay very, very true to that. Andrew Berry and his staff, they understand that the quickest way to end up with mediocre players is to draft for need. They will not do it.
When you look at 74, could you see them, if there's somebody that's sliding down into that 2nd round, middle of the 2nd round, so it wouldn't cost a ton, could you see him attaching, a veteran player to that 74 to move up and try to get somebody they really like?
I don't know so much about a veteran player right now because, I think they have the core of the team that they've worked so hard to put together for these last 3 years. And I don't think they'll part easily with any of those guys. They've worked very hard on the contracts. They've worked very hard to assemble the rooms in terms of just team chemistry and those kinds of things. So I don't think that they will be quick to part with any of those core players, and we know who they all are. I mean, they're the key starters, the guys that they have under contract for the next 3 years or so, the guys that are in the prime of their career. I don't see any of those guys leaving the team right now.
All right, let's take a look at, and you've written an article about this, so take us through this, how the Browns have fared in the third round of the NFL draft since 2022. Since 2020, rather. In 2022, it was Emerson, Wright, and Bell in the third round. 2021, Anthony Schwartz. 2020, Jordan Elliott, Jacob Phillips. Take us through that article and what you arrived at.
Well, my conclusion was that they have one bona fide surefire starter out of that group. And again, they drafted 2 in 2020, 1 in 21, and 3 in 2022. And so far, right now, they only have one surefire starter out of those guys. And, they have to hope, I think, that 1 or 2 more of those guys sort of step up into a starting role. And they've got some that have the potential to do that. Alex Wright would be one of those. Maybe David Bell would be one of those. Maybe Jacob Phillips would be one of those. He's got to stay healthy. But these are some of the guys that I think have potential to do well there. Jordan Elliott, I mean, he has a chance to go out and prove this year that he's something a little bit more than he was last year in Joe Woods' defense. Now he's going to be with Jim Schwartz. Maybe he's got more to him than meets the eye. So, so there's potential for more starters. And what you really want out of your third round picks, if you can do it, you want to get starters out of that round. That's not a throwaway round. You start to get to the throwaway round somewhere around maybe the 5th round or so. But 3, that's not there yet. So, you need a little bit more from what they've gotten from them so far.
When you look at guys like Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas, we talked about Perrion Winfrey. Is this kind of I don't want to say a new start, but you've got Jim Schwartz, who has a history of developing guys like that. I would imagine if you're a defensive lineman, you can't wait to get in and see what this guy tells you to do.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I talked to a lot of those defensive linemen that played for him with the Philadelphia Eagles during Super Bowl week, and they just kind of went on and raved about what it was like to play for him. He's got a special place in his heart for defensive linemen, Jim Schwartz does. He lets the dogs eat, and they love it. They love to play for him. They love to shine. He feels that that's the most important thing you need to do on a defense is to disrupt the quarterback and obviously stop the run up there. But he takes care of those guys and they love playing for him. So I would think any one of those guys, Alex Wright, Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, that they will be looking forward to getting better.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break. Which Brown can the Browns least afford to lose this season? Sports4CLE straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at GreenieSportsCards.com.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Mary Kay, I know you've talked about this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. What player do you think the Browns can least afford to lose to injury this season?
Yeah, when we talked about that, we took Myles Garrett and Deshaun Watson off the table because on offense and defense, obviously, those are two of the guys that you cannot afford to lose. So we went that way with it. So I'll stick with that here. I went with Amari Cooper after that. I just think that Amari really makes this offense go. I think he, to be able to catch 9 touchdown passes like he did last year, even though Deshaun only started 6 games, and you had Jacoby Brissett for the other 11, and he doesn't throw a lot of touchdown passes. I just think Amari is just a terrific receiver. When you look at some of these other teams and you take their best receiver off the field, the Tyreek Hills, and, that caliber of receiver, then, that team, really just isn't the same. I'm talking about the Jamar Chases and that level. Amari is right up there with all of those guys, and I think that that would be the number one thing that you would not be able to replace very easily.
Along those lines, how excited do you think Kevin Stefanski is to design an offense for Deshaun Watson? And think about it in these terms. Kirk Cousins, really good quarterback, doesn't have the same skills really that Deshaun Watson does. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. Same thing with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, this is the chance for a guy that has a really good offensive mind to go out and play, doctor with his offense with a guy that can do things that nobody else he's worked with can.
Yeah, I think it's important. And, I think people want to judge and grade Kevin Stefanski on what he's done to this point. But let's see what he can do with the Deshaun Watson. I keep saying that over and over and over again. Why would you give it up just when you are possibly on the brink of the promised land, just when you're about to hit the jackpot with a guy who can throw from every arm angle, who can throw those no-look passes? I mean, Deshaun Watson, he's excited to do the kinds of things that he sees Patrick Mahomes out there doing. He hasn't had a chance to really do those things since 2020. He's ready to come in here and just light it up. And I think they're going to give him a lot of authority to do the things that he wants to do. They want him to feel happy. They want him to feel comfortable. He will have a say in designing what he does. And I think he will even have, just more authority at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. And you know what? That's one of the things that when you watch him from Houston, he's really good at diagnosing things at the line of scrimmage. That was a strength of his.
Absolutely. And he wants to do that. And he wants to have more say and more opportunity to run the show out there and just be the improvisational playmaker that he is, to use his legs when he sees fit, to do some crazy things. And he's going to need to have some crazy playmakers there with him. And that's why I think, like a fast, twitchy guy like an Elijah Moore is going to be really, really good for him. You have to be ready for what Deshaun Watson is going to have to offer. And, I think, like I said, a fast guy like an Elijah Moore will be ready for all of that. I think, obviously, Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now you're going to have Jordan Akins, the tight end, kind of like a big receiver, has worked with Deshaun before. They have chemistry. David Njoku. So there's a lot to work with. I think they're going to be tough to handle.
Again, I know this is from one of your Hey Mary Kays. Do you think the Browns will have all of their injured linebackers ready to go this season?
That's the plan. That is exactly what they're on track to do right now. We've seen some of them. We've talked to a few of them along the way. But again, with the offseason program starting next week, we will have an opportunity to check in with a couple of guys. Not really quite sure who yet. It's not going to be like an open locker room type of situation or anything like that where you can bounce around and check in with 10 people in one day. But we recently saw, Jacob Phillips at the Sports Award. He said he's on track coming off of the torn pec. You've got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah coming off of a mid-foot sprain, Sione Takitaki with the ACL, and then Anthony Walker Jr. with the torn quad. They're all on track to be ready to practice in training camp. Some will be limited. They'll go easy on some of them, but the goal is to get them on the field at the start of the season.
What do you think this defense's identity will be under Jim Schwartz?
I think it will be very attack-minded. I think you will see those guys, like I said before, those dogs up front, they're going to eat. You're not just going to rush from the outside. You're going to rush from the inside. They'll move guys in. I mean, let's say, for instance, that you think you could get a nice inside pass rush from Alex Wright. So you put him in the middle, occasionally, or you'll bounce Miles in there, or whatever the case may be. You'll put Dalvin outside if you need to. I think you'll see those guys, move around some. I think that they will be spread out wide at times, one or both ends. I think you'll see multiple fronts. They'll be very, very multiple. They have the versatility to do that. But first and foremost, they will be disruptive. That will be the goal.
Do you think the skill set of the guys we know a lot about, it seems like that matches? Doesn't that seem to play to the strengths of what they have?
Yeah, it does. Again, like I said, I still think they could add 2 more guys. And, that's what the draft is for. That's what trades in the late waves of free agency are for, is to bring in maybe 1 or 2 other guys that you can plug in at defensive tackle, defensive end. And as we've talked about, maybe even linebacker with these guys not being healthy. I actually do think that they need 1 more really good linebacker. So, the opportunities will be there. And I think before the season starts, you will have a little bit more of a bolstered defense.
Again, I know this is from one of your Hey Mary Kays. And the question is, do you think this season will be the last for Nick Chubb as a Brown?
Well, he's under contract again next season. They do a good job of keeping him fresh. He has a contract that you can restructure it a little bit. You can add a little bit more signing bonus. You can do some things with it if you need to, but he still is the sort of face of the franchise. I don't see him slowing down this year. If they think he will be doing that the following year, then they can always, protect themselves a little bit with some incentives in the contract and whatnot. But I see them trying to help ride Nick Chubb to a Super Bowl, and they're not going to give up on him before they get a chance to do that.
And his production still says he's one of the top running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, it does. And again, sometimes the running backs fall off a cliff kind of quickly, but he has shown no signs of that. I mean, he is a workout warrior. You see him, in the weight room, and then the Browns have done an excellent job of keeping some tread off of those tires. I think that's helped immensely, not just to get him through seasons, but to get him to the fourth quarter, where he can rip off one of those long runs late in the game. So, so I think they've managed it very well to get him through this contract.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Again, Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Really good stuff on the Browns, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We continue talking Browns. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. We're talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE, and we welcome in Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred's the senior analyst. Fred, appreciate the time as always. Let's begin. Last time we talked beginning of free agency, 5 steps to putting the Browns back in the playoffs. We went through them. Number 1, add a veteran defensive tackle starter or 2. Dalvin Tomlinson. Number 2 was add a veteran edge rusher, Okoronkwo. Number 3, add a veteran wide receiver to the rotation, Elijah Moore. Number 4, add a starting safety, Juan Thornhill. Number 5, re-sign Anthony Walker or an upgrade at linebacker. Again, it seems like the things Andrew Berry has done make sense.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on, Dave. I can't disagree with it because that's kind of what I wrote. Now, that doesn't mean that it'll turn out on the field the way, but the targets, with Okoronkwo, I think I had him. He was like the 3rd I had listed, target. Tomlinson, I think, was 4. I think Juan Thornhill was 3rd. Walker, obviously, if he was healthy, was the target. And then I said I would almost rather, if they can't sign a veteran wide receiver, make a trade because that's the easiest way to make sure you get one. And I threw out the usual suspects, DeAndre Hopkins or Brandon Cooks. But a guy like Elijah Moore was the 3rd one I had listed. So, they're not the top tier, like Javon Hargrave. They were in on that, but they come out with Tomlinson. And so they all seem to make, sense to me. Now you need to add some depth because although you have the starters, I'm a little worried, as we all know, any injuries that occur, what do you have behind these guys?
Yeah, and at least the areas that you thought were weaknesses, they went out and tried to improve on. Do you think they're done with what they've done in free agency? Do you think there's a move or two that they have left? Because you're right, if 1 or 2 of these guys, and there's going to be injuries, the question is, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually coming out with on Thursday a reset. Where do you go from here? And I still would like the only starter of the 22, in my opinion, that's available is the other starting defensive tackle. That's in my opinion. You got Tomlinson. They might think it's Jordan Elliott or Perrion Winfrey or Tommy Togiai, but I think there's veterans available. There's 4 or 5 of them. Poona Ford and Ashawn Robinson, Akeem Hicks, Al Woods is the guy they had come in, Matt Ioannidis. Those are guys that I would think if you could get them on a 1-year kind of a cheap deal, that would make more sense. Then you don't have to, rush or put one of these other guys in. They can still be in the rotation. But I think you need depth. And Jim Schwartz always shown he's always been deep on the defensive line. And I just think that there's guys there. as you see one by one signing with teams, they're not getting the big contracts. They're getting 1 year incentive deals. And that's what I think it seems like, for the people I've talked to, those moves are there for the taking. Maybe the players are just weighing their options, what's the best 1 year option for them.
Yeah, and the other thing is come June 1st, the Browns will get some more money under the cap when John Johnson III's cap number actually gets added back to it. So there's all kinds of things that are in play there. This is a tweet from Jack Duffin, also from the Orange and Brown Report. Always does great work. Free agents signed before the draft each year. Re-signings not included in this for the Browns under Andrew Berry. 2013, there were 13 of them. 2021, 6. 2022, 9. 2023, 8. That doesn't include Marquise Goodwin's because he's not officially signed yet. So, again, it kind of comes back to, I think Andrew Berry has done a very good job at taking a step back, looking at the roster and saying, man, we need to upgrade this area each and every year. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to work out on the field. I'm not saying that. But at least he's able to take a really hard and objective look at the roster.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I mean, you use free agency to address some immediate needs because you always want veterans that have been there, done that, and you know what you're getting with them. They can step in immediately and play, and that's what they've done. The draft is always your lifeblood because you're adding younger players on cheaper contracts. But the downside there is, especially when you're not drafting till the third round and you're planning to win now, I don't know how many guys you're going to count on in the third round or lower to immediately help you in 2023. That's why I think you need a little more depth in the veteran rotation. That's what I think they'll do. Maybe not before the draft, but certainly after. They will add some guys. I would rather them get some guys that are in pretty good, starting caliber now than take the chance on letting them, leave and sign somewhere else. I mean, I think I talked about this before, maybe on this show, that a guy like Jadeveon Clowney last year, he gave him a 1 year deal for $10 million, and you got 2 sacks out of him, and he missed a few games because of injury, when you could have maybe got a Jerry Hughes and a Melvin Ingram, both edge rushers, for the same $10 million. I think it was 6 and 4 they signed for. One had 9 sacks, one had 6. You would have got 15 sacks for the same money. Now, they have money to reposition. You mentioned Jack Duffin. They've really only restructured Deshaun Watson. That was the big one, and that allowed them to do all these moves. As he pointed out, there's 4 or 5 other guys, probably the Myles Garrett or the Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, guys like that, or even the offensive lineman, that you could restructure another one to free up the money to get another guy. It just comes down to what Jim Schwartz on defense thinks he has with the guys already here.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And if you want to look no further than what happened with the defensive tackles a season ago to what we're talking about. They relied on guys that hadn't done it before. Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, Perrion Winfrey. It was a major disappointment.
Yeah, and you can't count on that. They want to win this year, and that's why I'm saying you got, in my opinion, fooled last year because we were all saying that the defensive tackle looks weak. You didn't re-sign, any of the guys that were there before, and they were counting on the young guys to step up, and they didn't do that. I think Jordan Elliott was a big disappointment last year. I don't think he really made more than a play or two that was impactful, and you cannot go into this season. Of course, Tomlinson will help big time, but what if he goes down? You're in the same situation. So you have to get at least another veteran in there that can stop the run, because until you stop the run, you're not going to be in very good position on defense. In the final 14 games, they give up over 130 yards, 10 of the final 14. And that was basically because teams just ran it down their throat and they couldn't stop the run. So, yeah, the guys they got will help, but you sure would feel a lot better if you got another run stopper in there. And what I'm saying is, I just don't think you're breaking the bank to give a guy a 1-year deal for $4 or $5 million or whatever the going rate is. Sure, those guys have to agree, and maybe they're out there made offers and they're just waiting to see. But I sure would feel better about things if you brought a guy in and took care of it. Same way with edge. I mean, and safety. Right now, you only have 4 safeties on the team. One was on the practice team, and one was a rookie who didn't play at all on defense. So you have 2 starters, but no backup. So you're going to draft some depth, but I would feel a little better if you got somebody that's played in the NFL and has some experience, especially up front on the defensive line.
I'm with you. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rika. With the Greg Newsome situation and him hiring Drew Rosenthal, it's kind of a concern of mine. If you were Barry and you know that Newsome is unhappy here, would you trade him for Devin White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because he also requested a trade. Now, obviously, I don't think Greg Newsome by himself will get the deal done, but Devin White is a linebacker that we sorely need. Would you do it? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. That's not an area they pay big money for. And Devin White, I believe it's like $11 million. It's something in that neighborhood. And you still got Greg Newsome a couple years to go on his rookie deal. That doesn't match. And I like Devin White. I would not do that trade.
Yeah, I mean, with the premium of cornerbacks in the passing game, especially when you're going against the Joe Burrows twice a year and probably Lamar Jackson and obviously the Steelers with their, and then the AFC, Mahomes and so forth. You really have to have cornerbacks. That's why they get paid a lot of money. And, I'm a little privy to the news with the Greg Newsome. I think, and this is just me, my pure speculation, is I think it came out a little bit because there's a disparity between an outside cover guy and a slot cover guy in the pay. You have to look no further than Denzel Ward, about $20 million a year. And a slot guy, the top ones are getting $8 to $10 million. And I think, if anything, Greg Newsome was just saying about not playing the slot. He doesn't want to get cast inside as a slot cornerback because he's looking at his neighbor there, Denzel Ward, and saying that's the type of contract I'm looking at when my second deal is up. And so I kind of agree. I like Devin White, but I would not make that trade. I don't think the Browns would because they haven't paid their combined linebacker rooms $11 million a year since Andrew Berry's come on. So again, I don't know how Jim Schwartz values linebacker, but I would have to think if they were going to go get a guy, they wouldn't have went out, and make that kind of trade. They would look to maybe, sign a veteran like they did with Anthony Walker, somebody, in a much shorter term deal 1 year for less money. Again, I would rather have more quantity, 2 or 3 guys for $11 million. At $11 million, you could get some of the guys I'm talking about on the defensive line. Maybe you could get an edge rusher and a defensive tackle, and then maybe even a linebacker. So I would rather have quantity and not put it all in one guy.
Agree with you wholeheartedly. Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at the state of the Browns according to Pro Football Focus. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. So this is from Pro Football Focus. State of all 32 of the NFL teams for the Browns. Remaining starter needs, they say none. Remaining depth needs, edge and safety. Their rationale here. There are truly zero excuses for this team at this point. The Browns simply need to be a playoff team and arguably win a playoff game or two. And again, that's according to Pro Football Focus. Fred, I'm with you. I think another defensive tackle might be nice. Maybe Maurice Hurst can stay healthy. But their point, it's a really good roster that needs to be a playoff team.
Well, absolutely. You know, when you go out and do what you did to get Deshaun Watson and you went through what you've went through, you know, with the public, you know, ridicule and not to mention the assets, 3 first-round picks and 2 other picks and $230 million guaranteed. It's all about winning now. And you've got some high-priced guys in their prime. And like I said, they didn't make that move to play for next year. I think last year, once the 11-game suspension came down, I think they really publicly might have said, yeah, we're going this year. But really, what they were saying is we're playing for 2023, and that's where all effort is on in this year. And that's why I'm just saying, why leave an opening or two that if your defensive tackle goes down or defensive end goes down or any of the guys, fill up those positions so your depth isn't, depleted. So I agree with them. I believe that you need quality depth, and I think the roster as a whole is quality. And whether you want to say start or not, I'm just saying I'm not sure if you can count on Maurice Hurst or you can count on the other one they got from the Cowboys, I think Tristan Hill.
Yep.
On defensive tackle. By the dollars they're getting paid, almost looks like, they're not counting on them necessarily to even make the team. It's going to be up to them. So, yeah, I just think you need a little bit more, and you cannot count on draft picks. I mean, there's some positions you can count on a draft pick maybe to immediately step in and be good, but at some of the positions they need, I don't know if you can. We've seen learning takes time, and that's why I say when all your focus is on getting the playoffs in 2023, add those guys you need to fill in those gaps. That's just the way I look at it. Maybe they don't look at it that way.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And to your point, the front office isn't going to tell the locker room or anybody else, yeah, with that 11-game suspension, we're playing for next year. You can't do that to guys that are putting their body on the line every week. Let's look at some of the defensive tackles that are still out there. We've talked about some of these, and again, it's familiar names: Ioannidis, Poona Ford, A'Shawn Robinson, Akeem Hicks, Al Woods. We know they've talked to Woods. They've had him in for a meeting. You see Ndamukong Suh, who has played for some of the teams that Jim Schwartz has been around. Of those guys, who do you like, given what it might take to get them signed?
Well, I have them on my list. I have 5 of them on there, and I'd be happy with any of them. But Ioannidis, to me, would be the number one because he's really truly run stopper, and he can give you some pressure inside. But I don't know the dollars they're asking for these guys. There's a reason they're unsigned. But as you see guys slowly trickle, one or so. I think Quentin Jefferson signed yesterday, and it seems like, one a day or, they kind of evaporate off the board. And you see the dollars, they don't seem to be that big. A guy like Suh last year, if I remember right, he waited until almost the middle of the season before he signed. Some of them guys are just like, okay, I want to see where a team's at. I'm really Super Bowl or bust. or at least playoffs, and they want to make sure they're signing with a team that's going somewhere. So there's obviously stories behind each guy, but on the list you just showed, Jared, I'd be happy with any of those top 5 up there. Al Woods was on my list now because he came in with the Browns. I mean, I would rather maybe some other, but I'd be happy with any of them. A guy that you just know you can plug them in and they're going to stop the run. Even if they're not a starter, they're in the rotation and they can get the job done, stop the run.
All right, before we take another break, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 potentially disastrous moves the Browns could make with the 74th pick in the draft. Number 3, drafting a running back. Again, this is with their first of the third-round picks. Number 2, picking an offensive lineman. And number 1, they say, selecting a tight end. I don't know that if there's somebody that Andrew Berry thinks can be a starter at any of those positions in 2 years, at 74, I think you got to take him. At 74, if you identify a guy and think he has a future in the league that's going to be 3-4 years, you're going to take him.
Yeah, I think that they're in a position now with, like we've just been talking about, addressing all their big needs, is that they really can go best player available on their board, who they think is the best player. And that's what they're doing. They're looking to supplement down the road. I mean, Harrison Bryant's in his final year. They got Akins, who you have for this year and next year. And I do think they'll take a tight end. I don't know if they'll take him first there, but if they have a guy they have graded better than the other guys they already have on the roster, they'd probably take a tight end. Did anybody see them taking Martin Emerson in the 3rd round last year? I think it was at 68. I certainly didn't. No. And then when they did take a cornerback, I'm scrambling to find his name on a list because he wasn't ranked as one of the top cornerbacks by a lot of them. Our lad had him, up there, but a lot of them didn't. And he turned out to might be the best pick, that Andrew Berry's had outside the first round, And so I think they could go anywhere. I don't think it'd be a disaster if they take a running back because all you have to do is look at 2 years ago. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt went down, and Dearness Johnson had a big season. Now it looks like there's not going to be Kareem Hunt or Dearness Johnson. You got Nick Chubb, and they're probably going to go with Jerome Ford. But what if they both get hurt? Then you got, John Kelly, who's been on the practice squad's really the only other guy, unless you're going to go with Demetric Felton. So if they see a running back, down there, they may take one. I don't know if they'll take one in the 3rd round, but an offensive lineman, I think at left tackle, I don't know how sold they are on Jedrick Wills. And if they see a guy they think could be the future left tackle, he could be a guy they take. But I don't look at anybody they take at 74 as being a guy you can count on this year. I've said that before. Okay, Martin Emerson, but did anybody think he was going to immediately, be able to play? He still had mistakes and ups and downs. They want to win now. You cannot count on one of the guys at 74 to step in and be a stud. There might be a guy that ends up in training camp going, he's a stud. But I don't think you can count on that. So I wouldn't look at anything really as a disaster because they're looking down the road. And that's where I'm thinking right now. They're looking at immediate, who can help them now. And that's where free agency is the biggest, or trades are the biggest way to get somebody who can help them immediately.
Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report now. I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, how important is this year for Kevin Stefanski? We'll dive into that. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, as I was sitting through this, how important do you think this year is from Kevin Stefanski? And here's where I'm going with that. So you heard Stephon Diggs in Minnesota was unhappy playing in his offense. We know Odell Beckham Jr. was unhappy playing in this offense. When you look at the quarterbacks Kevin Stefanski has had, it's been Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett. He has a guy that has more of a skill set and more of a tool belt and toolbox in Deshaun Watson. How important is it, do you think, Kevin Stefanski give Deshaun Watson his quarterback freedom to kind of open up this passing offense?
Yeah, I think that's the number one issue this offseason is not so much necessarily freedom for Watson to do what he wants, but to figure out what he does best and put him in that position. Because I think it's important for Stefanski, but the bottom line is this is all going to live or die with Deshaun Watson, in my opinion. If he plays like he did before when he last played in Houston, and there's no reason he shouldn't be able to get back to the level he was, I think the sky's the limit for this offense and this team. If he plays like he did last year, then they're gonna have trouble any way you slice it. And so it's got to be on Stefanski, as you said. Guys he's had in the past do not have the skills that Deshaun Watson has. He has to maximize that, and I think that would make your wide receivers much better. I mean, Mahomes, I've said this before, when they were early in his career, Tyreek Hill, everybody knew him. But other than, I'm not talking about Travis Kelce, but all the other wide receivers, not too many people knew who they were. McCole Hardman and some of those guys, they're just guys. But they looked a lot better when they had Patrick Mahomes throwing them open. And Deshaun Watson can make a David Bell look really good, or an Anthony Schwartz, or Elijah Moore, or Peoples-Jones, just because he can escape, he can make the play go, and he can extend it with his legs, and that allows guys to get open. And so I really think it's all on Watson. Sure, Stefanski's cannot restrict him, but has to put him in a position to be successful. But if he does and Watson doesn't take advantage of it, it's not going to matter what happens. But so from that aspect, I do think it's very important that Stefanski, this is the guy he wanted, and he is really the first time he can put all effort into designing everything around him and not game plan 11 games for Brissett and then on the fly try to change everything.
Let's talk a little bit about what Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin kind of bring. And I know they're different skill sets, but when I look at Elijah Moore, because of the way defenses seem to play off him, and to a certain extent, Marquise Goodwin too, those are easy yards. Quick dump-offs to those guys turn, it's 2-3 yards that could turn into 12, 13, 15.
Yeah, they're 4-3 guys. And in the 40, and that's what they didn't have is game-breaking speed. That's what Anthony Schwartz was supposed to be, but we never really saw anything from him in the first 2 years. Doesn't mean he's done, but it means they're ready to move on. And what I like about Goodwin, he's been there and done that, and he's reliable and he's depth. And Moore, we haven't really seen a lot of him, but there's a reason he was drafted so high, and there was a reason he was available because some of his situation with the Jets. But I think, like I said before, if Watson can get him the ball in open space, they're only one broken tackle or foot race from a touchdown every time they touch the ball. So I think, again, it's on Stefanski to scheme it and get Watson acclimated to get those guys the ball in open space. If a guy's 10 yards off him, take that 5-6 yards. And if there's a missed tackle, it's a touchdown. And if they make the tackle, it's a 5-6 yard play.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Hey, it's always fun talking football in April with you.
All right, Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff in the Orange and Brown Report. Fred Greetham, senior analyst. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.